Imagine being trapped in a place where every day is a struggle for survival. Welcome to the world of Curtis Jackson, better known as 50 Cent. Born and raised in the violent, poverty-stricken neighborhood of South Jamaica, Queens, fear was a constant companion. But 50 Cent didn't run from his fears. He harnessed them. He turned them into fuel. Now, fear is a natural response to danger. It's a survival instinct. But 50 Cent wasn't just interested in survival. He wanted more. He yearned for a life beyond the confines of his neighborhood, a life where he was not just surviving, but thriving. The fear of being stuck in the same place, the fear of being just another forgotten name, that fear became his driving force. It pushed him to hustle, to strive, to reach for a life beyond what was expected of him. And that's the power of fear. When you stop running from it, when you stop letting it paralyze you, that's when you can begin to use it as fuel. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing? Maybe it's your job, your reputation, your dreams. Whatever it is, don't run from it. Embrace it. Let the fear of losing it push you to work harder, to strive for more, to become the best version of yourself. Fear isn't the enemy. It's a motivator. It's a catalyst. When you use fear as fuel, you transform it from a barrier into a driving force. You turn it from something that holds you back into something that propels you forward. So, what are you afraid of losing, and how can you turn that fear into your fuel? The power of fear can be a formidable force. It's not about avoiding fear. It's about understanding it, harnessing it, and using it to fuel your journey to success. As 50 Cent did, let your fears not confine you, but define you. Life is a whirlwind of unpredictability, a storm of chaos that can either break us or make us. Let's dive into the eye of that storm, right where 50 Cent found himself. As a kid in South Jamaica, Queens, unpredictability was the only constant. Violence might erupt at any moment, poverty was pervasive, and tomorrow was never promised. But instead of being crushed by the chaos, 50 Cent embraced it. Think about it. How often do we try to control everything around us? We strive for order, predictability, safety. But life has a funny way of tossing our plans aside, doesn't it? The chaos is always there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. 50 Cent saw the chaos for what it was, an opportunity. Instead of striving for control, he chose to adapt. He learned to navigate the unpredictable twists and turns of his life, leveraging them to his advantage. He stayed calm amidst the storm, strategically positioning himself to rise above it. Now let's be clear, embracing chaos doesn't mean throwing caution to the wind. It's not about being reckless or irresponsible. It's about recognizing that life is inherently unpredictable and learning to ride the waves of uncertainty instead of being drowned by them. It's about staying cool, staying strategic, even when everything around you is falling apart. Imagine if you could do that. Imagine if instead of being paralyzed by uncertainty, you could use it as a springboard. If instead of running from chaos, you could harness it. What might you achieve? What heights might you reach? 50 Cent's story tells us that the chaos that threatens to break us can also be the very thing that makes us. It's not something to fear, but rather something to embrace. Just as he did, we can adapt, stay calm, and use the chaos to our advantage. So, are you ready to stop running from chaos and start using it to your advantage? Most of us see fear as a wall, a barrier that keeps us from reaching our goals. But what if we could turn that wall into a door? This brings us to the crux of the 50th law, where fear is not an adversary, but an ally. 50 Cent didn't just survive his fears, he thrived on them. He learned to lean into his fears, to harness them as tools for success. Picture it. A young man from South Jamaica, Queens, the odds stacked high against him, not just surviving, but thriving. How did he do it? He leaned into his fears. He used them as stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. If he feared poverty, he worked harder. If he feared obscurity, he pushed the boundaries of creativity. This is the essence of the 50th law, making fear an ally. But how do we make fear our ally? Let's break it down. The 50th law is simple: fear nothing. It's not about being reckless or believing you're invincible. It's about a strategic, conscious approach to fear. It's about understanding that fear is a natural response to the unknown, but it doesn't have to control you. It's about deciding to walk through the door of fear instead of standing paralyzed in front of the wall. By fearing nothing, we become free. Free from the constraints that fear imposes on us. Free to take risks, to push boundaries, to step out of our comfort zones. When we fear nothing, and not failure, not rejection, not loss, we become free to become the person we want to be. Fear is a powerful emotion, but it doesn't have to be a negative one. Like 50 Cent, we can learn to use our fears as fuel, driving us forward rather than holding us back. We can learn to see fear not as a wall, but as a door to opportunity, to growth and to success. So, are you ready to start seeing fear not as a wall, but as a door to opportunity? Fear, it's often seen as a negative force, a hindrance, but what if we told you it could be your greatest ally? In the case of 50 Cent, fear wasn't something to be avoided, but rather a powerful motivator. No, he didn't have the luxury of ignoring it or pretending it didn't exist. Fear was an everyday reality, but he didn't let it stop him. Instead, he used it as a springboard for his ambition, his drive, and his success. Fear of being stuck, fear of being forgotten, fear of a life lived in the shadows. These fears didn't paralyze him. Rather, they propelled him forward, pushing him to hustle harder, strive greater, and rise above the circumstances of his upbringing. He took these fears, these seemingly insurmountable hurdles, and turned them into the stepping stones on his path to success. So how can we apply this to our own lives? How can we thrive in fear? The key is in embracing it, in acknowledging its presence but refusing to let it dictate our actions, in taking the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of loss, and using it as a catalyst for change. When we do this, we become free. Free to take risks, free to push boundaries, free to become the person we want to be. Fear no longer becomes a barrier, but a doorway to new opportunities and experiences. But remember, this isn't about being reckless. It's not about running headfirst into danger without a second thought. No, this is about being strategic, about being conscious of our fears and using them as a tool for growth and development. So let's flip the script. Let's stop seeing fear as the enemy and start seeing it as an ally. Let's stop letting it hold us back and start using it to propel us forward. So, are you ready to stop fearing and start thriving? We've talked about turning fear into power, embracing chaos, and making fear an ally. But how does this look in action? Let's take a closer look at 50 Cent's life. He didn't just survive the streets of South Jamaica, Queens. He thrived. He wasn't paralyzed by the fear of poverty or violence. He turned those fears into motivation, into action. He let the fear of being stuck in that world fuel his efforts to build a better life for himself. Consider his music career. The fear of failure could have stopped him in his tracks, but he used that fear to fuel his ambition, driving him to work harder and smarter. He didn't just become a rapper. He became an entrepreneur, an actor, a producer. And then there's the chaos. The music industry is notoriously unpredictable. But 50 Cent didn't try to fight it. He embraced it, he adapted, he learned to ride the waves of uncertainty instead of being swept away by them. So, how can you apply these principles in your own life? Start by identifying your fears. What holds you back? What are you afraid of losing? Once you've identified your fears, don't run from them, use them. Let them fuel your ambition, your drive. And when you encounter chaos, and you will, embrace it. Learn to adapt. Stay calm, be strategic. Remember, chaos can break others, but it can elevate you. The 50th law isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. It's about turning fear into power and chaos into opportunity. It's about making fear your ally, not your enemy, and it's about learning to ride the waves of uncertainty instead of being swept away by them. Remember, fear isn't your enemy, it's your fuel, so are you ready to ignite it? Imagine being shot 9 times, and instead of feeling weak, you feel invincible. That's the story of 50 Cent. In our world, vulnerability is often seen as a flaw, something to be hidden and masked. But what if we told you that it's actually a source of untapped power? This is a philosophy that 50 Cent, a man who survived 9 gunshot wounds, has embraced wholeheartedly. When bullets pierced his body, 50 Cent didn't crumble. He didn't hide from his vulnerability. Instead, he confronted it, owned it. He turned what many would see as a glaring weakness into the foundation of his strength. This is a concept that author Robert Greene emphasizes in his book, The 50th Law. Greene posits that true strength, real power, comes from owning your vulnerabilities. When you acknowledge and accept your weaknesses, they can no longer be used against you. Instead, they become a part of your armor, your shield. And what could be more powerful than turning your biggest weakness into your greatest weapon? This is more than just a survival story. It's a lesson in harnessing the power of vulnerability. 50 Cent's journey from being shot 9 times to becoming a global music and business icon is a testament to this. He didn't just survive, he thrived. He demonstrated that vulnerability, when confronted and owned, can be transformed into an indomitable force. It's a compelling narrative, isn't it? A man who was nearly killed, rising from the ashes, stronger and more powerful than before. But it's more than just a story, it's a philosophy, a mindset, a way of life. And it's one that we can all learn from. So the next time you feel vulnerable, remember, it's not a sign of weakness. It's an opportunity to find your true power. It's a chance to turn what may seem like a disadvantage into your greatest strength, because in the end, it's not about what happens to us, but how we respond to it. And just like 50 Cent, we all have the ability to turn our vulnerabilities into our greatest sources of power. From the streets of Queens to the pinnacle of the music and business world, 50 Cent's journey has been one of self-reliance. Let's delve deeper into this fascinating journey and uncover the power of self-reliance that fueled 50 Cent's rise to the top. Picture this: a young man from a neighborhood where dreams often get suffocated before they can even take a breath. But our protagonist had a different plan. He knew that he couldn't wait for a knight in shining armor to rescue him from his circumstances. He was his own knight, his own savior. In his book, The 50th Law, Robert Greene tells us that self-reliance is the key to freedom. It's the ability to trust in your own powers and abilities rather than placing your trust in others. It's about standing on your own 2 feet and taking control of your destiny. And that's exactly what 50 Cent did. His journey wasn't a walk in the park. It was riddled with obstacles, setbacks, and hardships. But he never let these challenges deter him. Instead, he used them as stepping stones to propel himself towards his goals. He knew that the only person who could truly ensure his success was himself. Self-reliance isn't about disregarding the importance of others or living in isolation. It's about understanding that the ultimate responsibility for your life and your success lies with you. It's about recognizing that you are the architect of your own fate, the captain of your own ship. 50 Cent didn't just rely on himself for his music career, he extended this principle of self-reliance into his business ventures as well. He didn't just want to be a successful rapper, he wanted to be a successful entrepreneur. And he achieved this by relying on his instincts, his abilities, and his determination. Self-reliance empowers you. It gives you the freedom to make your own decisions and to chart your own path. It teaches you to trust yourself and to have confidence in your abilities. And most importantly, it makes you resilient. Because when you know that you can rely on yourself, setbacks become less daunting. 50 Cent's story is a testament to the power of self-reliance. It's a story of a man who refused to be a product of his circumstances and instead chose to shape his own destiny. His journey teaches us that our success is in our hands. It's not dictated by our circumstances, our background, or other people. It's determined by our actions, our decisions, and our determination to rely on ourselves. Remember, your success is in your hands, and no one else's. That's the power of self-reliance. When your back is against the wall and you have nothing to lose, that's when you become truly dangerous. That's the Deathground mentality. This concept, the Deathground mentality, is a cornerstone of Robert Greene's The 50th Law, and it's a mentality that rapper and entrepreneur 50 Cent exemplifies. It's a mindset that pushes you to your limits, forces you to confront your fears, and propels you towards peak performance. Imagine for a moment being in the shoes of 50 Cent. Raised in the rough streets of Queens, he was no stranger to adversity. He faced situations where retreat wasn't an option. His back was against the wall. It was either fight or face the consequences. And fight he did, with a ferocity that would later define his career. That's the essence of the Deathground mentality. It's about fighting like you have nothing to lose, because in many cases you don't. It's about seeing every challenge, every setback, as an opportunity to push harder, to fight more fiercely. You see, when you're on your death ground, There's no room for excuses. There's no room for procrastination, for second guessing, for fear. There's only room for action, and that's why this mentality is so powerful. It forces you to take action, to do whatever it takes to survive, to succeed. But let's get one thing straight. The Deathground mentality isn't about being reckless or throwing caution to the wind. It's about understanding that sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risk at all. It's about knowing that the stakes are high and that you have to give it your all no matter what. This mentality was a driving force behind 50 Cent's rise to success. He knew that he couldn't afford to wait around for opportunities to come his way. He had to create them. He had to seize them. And that's exactly what he did in his music career, in his business ventures, in every aspect of his life. So, how can we apply the Deathground mentality to our own lives? It starts by recognizing our own death grounds. Those moments when the stakes are high, when we feel like our back is against the wall, in those moments we need to remember that this is not a time for fear or hesitation. It's a time for action. We need to confront our fears, to push beyond our comfort zones. We need to stop making excuses and start taking action, because that's when we become truly dangerous. That's when we unlock our full potential. That's when we perform at our peak. So when you find yourself on your death ground, remember it's not a moment of despair. It's your moment of peak performance. So what have we learned from 50 Cent and Robert Greene's The 50th Law? We've discovered that vulnerability isn't a weakness, but a source of real power. Remember how 50 Cent didn't crumble after being shot 9 times. He turned his vulnerability into strength, into an invincible shield. No one can use your vulnerabilities against you if you own them. It's like turning your kryptonite into your superpower. That's the first lesson from the 50th Law. Next, we delved into the power of self-reliance. 50 Cent climbed his way from the streets of Queens to the top of the music and business world. He didn't wait for a savior, he became his own. Robert Greene echoes this sentiment in the 50th Law, reminding us that relying on others for security is a trap. When you realize your success is in your hands, you become the architect of your destiny. That's the second lesson. Finally, we explored the Deathground mentality. Remember when 50 Cent felt cornered? He fought like he had nothing to lose. That's when you become a force to be reckoned with. Greene labels this the Deathground because it's where the stakes are high, and it's where you perform at your peak. Living with this mentality means no retreat, no surrender. You stop making excuses and start taking action. That's the third and most powerful lesson from the 50th Law. So, to sum up, we've learned that vulnerability can be a source of power, self-reliance is the key to freedom, and a Deathground mentality can drive us to perform at our peak. But remember, these lessons aren't just about surviving, they're about thriving, they're about turning fear into power, just like 50 Cent and Robert Greene. Remember, every challenge you face is an opportunity to transform yourself. Embrace your vulnerabilities, rely on yourself, and when your back is against the wall, fight like you've got nothing to lose. That's the 50th Law.